Welcome to Ensemble Techniques in Musicianship for Percussionists. This interactive instructional video is designed to offer student percussionists and conductors some insight into performing band and orchestral music more musically, making rehearsals more enjoyable. I will discuss drum history, technique, and ensemble skills for snare drum, bass drum, cymbals, tambourine, triangle, and maracas. Later in the video, I will perform excerpts of some standard band literature, and you will get the chance to play the same music along with the audio tape. You will need your instruments, the accompanying music booklet, and a music stand. So get your sticks and mallets and let's get started. This large Grand Republic snare drum is a replica of the snare drums commonly used during the Revolutionary War. When the rope is tensioned properly, the drum is extremely loud, making it an ideal instrument for signaling troops during battle. The snare drum was used in battle primarily because of its ability to be heard over musket and cannon fire. I will now demonstrate 3 camps again. Listen to the open double-stroke rolls. The rolls must be played as double bounces on a drum this size to activate the thick gut snares and allow the drum to resonate with maximum volume. The drum patterns known as rudiments were used in combination and variation to play music of the 18th century. The fife and drum corps drum major would call out the names of the rudiments to the drummers, and they would repeat the patterns, creating drum cadences. This is why so many of the rudiment names sound like their sticking patterns. Examples of this are the drag, ratamaqueue, or flamadiddle. Roll lengths are determined by the number of taps on the drumhead played as double bounces in this style of music. Listen to these examples: the paradiddle, flam tap, 5-stroke roll, 7-stroke roll, or the 5-stroke roll played in triple meter. The following is a brief excerpt of The Downfall of Paris using some of these rudiments. Notice the use of traditional snare drum grip to accommodate the angle of the drum as it hangs from the leather sling. This grip was widely used until the late 20th century when drum leveling carriers were introduced in marching bands, and percussionists decided that it made more sense to play all the percussion instruments with the same matched grip. During the Civil War, drum sizes decreased because the speed of warfare and troop movement increased. Troops marched from battle to battle much faster, and drums needed to be smaller to accommodate this. Compare the tempo of Yankee Doodle, written during the Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, and Dixie, written during the Civil War, 1861-1865. The following is a snare drum part that could have been used with the melody of Dixie written during the Civil War. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw tremendous change in American music. As band music evolved from a method of moving troops to a means of entertainment, as orchestra music had been, the need for large, loud drums decreased. Signaling over great distances was no longer important. Bands sat down and played concerts, often using transcriptions of popular orchestral music. As drums were made smaller to better balance with the winds and the strings, snares made of wire and cable were used instead of thick gut. These snares were much easier to play soft rhythms on. Today, most bands and orchestras play on snare drums ranging in size from 5 to 8 inches deep. The drums should be just below your belt level. Stand behind the drums with the snare throw-off directly in front of you. Picture a clock and have the snares run 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Grab the stick as if you're shaking hands with someone. Your thumb and your index finger are at the balance point. Then drop your hands to your sides and place them on the snare drum head at 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Elbows too wide, wrists too close together. Envision a pizza slice. Let the sticks freely bounce or rebound off the head. Playing at the edge is softer than at the center. Use this characteristic of the drum to your advantage. If the drum has too many high overtones or ring, synthetic mufflers may be used. This is a gel muffler. Gaffer's tape or other non-permanent tape may also be put on the outside of the head near the edge to cut some of the high overtone ring off of the drum. There are commercially available felt mufflers, most of which clip on to the rim of the drum. These are adjustable even when they're attached to the drum and are the preferred method of dampening the drum. Listen to the sound of the drum with a felt muffler. When playing rolls, allow the sticks to freely bounce off the head as you play individual buzzes. Too much pressure on the sticks will result in a squash bounce. Allow the sticks to bounce using your fingers, wrists, and arms to control the buzz. Although we don't often play double-stroke rolls in concert bands and orchestras today, we use the rudimental names for these rolls when deciding how many buzz strokes to place in each beat. This is very helpful to keeping the rhythm steady. In 2/4 or 4/4 time, where the beat is divided into equal subdivisions, a 5-stroke roll has the underlying hand pattern of 1/8 note and 2/16 notes. Listen to the roll played with its underlying subdivisions. You can follow along in the music booklet and practice this on your own. 5-stroke roll, duple subdivisions. A seven-stroke roll will have one more buzz stroke per eighth note beat and sound fuller or thicker than a five-stroke roll. The seven-stroke roll will be more difficult to squeeze into each beat at fast tempos. Listen to the seventh-stroke roll with a triple or triplet subdivision. Some snare drummers will play tapped six-stroke rolls, adding one extra note to a five-stroke. This unique roll is very full and thick and has the accent at the beginning or the attack of the roll. This roll works very nicely with horn afterbeats in a march. Rolls in 6/8 time should be felt or pulsed in triple meter. Listen to the five-stroke roll in 6/8 time. Rolls written with eighth notes are not always five-stroke rolls. The roll length should be chosen to complement the meter and tempo of the music. Remember that 2/4 and 4/4 have duple subdivisions, while 6/8 and 12/8 have triple subdivisions. Use the rolls that complement the subdivisions in the music you are performing. Keeping your hand pattern steady and consistent will improve the rhythmic stability of your rolls. The attacks and releases of the rolls are extremely important to good ensemble playing with winds and strings. Playing bass drum and tuning bass drum are two of the most difficult concepts for percussionists to get a hold of. When you tune your bass drum, take both heads down as low as possible and gradually increase the tension until you get a low rumble from the drum. You don't want the drum to have a definite pitch in the concert band or the orchestra. The drum should have a rumble similar to the rumble an organ has when the pedals are played. The drum is big. It has lots of air inside it. In order to activate the air and get both heads ringing, you need to use a heavy beater. This tennis ball is quite light. Listen to the sound of the tennis ball on the head. This red leather ball is dense and quite heavy. The heavier ball gets more air moving inside the drum and gets a bigger sound. Tennis ball, heavy leather ball. With that in mind, try to use the heaviest beater you have available to you. This is quite a heavy beater, and if I swing with my full arm weight, I'll get all the air inside the drum moving and get a low rumble. Playing the drum with glancing blows or J strokes simply doesn't get enough air moving inside the drum to get it speaking at its maximum volume. If I think about playing tennis and swinging with my full arm standing behind the drum, I can get lots of weight transferred into the drum. Standing on the side of the drum and striking this way doesn't get enough weight transferred to the head. The drum should not be used as a chin rest or a place to relax when playing. Stand behind the drum, think about playing tennis, swing with the full weight of your arm. Muffling the drum can be done with the free hand or the knee if your drum has a footrest, or a combination of these two. Short notes should be low and rumbly, but short. Simply stop the sound, the desired length of note. If an extremely short note is needed, you can use your free hand and muffle the resonating head as well. Too much constant dampening on the head doesn't get the low rumble that you want to hear from your bass drum. The playing area of the head is also important. The center of the head is called the node and is the deadest spot on the drum. Playing just off center will activate more overtones and give you more rumble. Different hardnesses of beater are also important to think about. When standing behind the drum, sometimes a beater that sounds too harsh to you, the player, will sound perfect when it's cutting through 60 or 70 pieces in a band or an orchestra. This is a quite hard beater that I've used that sounds great in the audience, but on top of the drum is quite harsh. This beater is covered with chamois and has a heavy wood ball. It also sounds quite harsh, but for certain pieces, it's exactly the right sound. When playing rolls on the drum, oftentimes composers will ask for a pair of timpani mallets. Timpani mallets are far too light to get all the air inside the drum moving to get a good resonant sound. Using a pair of heavy matched beaters and lifting off the head will get you a nice sound for rolls. Make sure that both beaters are the same distance from the edge of the drum to match the sound. A double-headed beater can be used for rolls, but only in an emergency. If you have to play two parts at once, say a suspended cymbal or a wood block with your opposite hand, it is possible to roll with one beater. It's a much less desirable sound. Whenever possible, use two beaters. The bass drum and cymbals work as a team and often read from the same part. For most band and orchestra literature, these instruments should be played next to each other for better ensemble. The bass drummer can act as a second conductor for the entire percussion section. If everyone can see the bass drum beater, entrances will be together. The bass drum and cymbals can coordinate accents and note lengths if they are close together and have clear communication. Of all the instruments in the percussion section, cymbals have the greatest ability to color the ensemble. Crashes can be forceful or gentle, long or short, thin or full. The following exercise will help players develop a feel for the different length of cymbal crashes. The quarter note buzz. Pinch the straps on the outside using the thumb and index fingers next to the bell. Touch the cymbal with as little of your hand as possible to maintain control. Some knuckle contact is necessary. Placing your hand through the cymbal strap is a marching band or drum corps technique, which is not necessary in concert playing. You can always set the cymbals down in between crashes to rest your arms. Now hold the left hand or the bottom hand cymbal at a 30 to 45 degree angle, resting your elbow on your hip. Rest your elbow on your hip only for this exercise to reduce fatigue as you practice. When you actually crash the cymbals, you will not rest your elbow on the hip. With the top cymbal offset slightly, the top edge about 1 inch below the bottom, set or drop the top cymbal on the bottom cymbal gently and allow the plates to vibrate or sizzle as long as possible. Imitate the sound of bacon in a frying pan. You only need to play piano or mezzo piano in volume. Reduce the length of the sizzle gradually until you can play a full quarter note followed by a quarter rest at about 60 beats per minute. Drop and lift. Drop and lift. Try for long sizzles imitating water drops in a frying pan. This is similar to practicing one-handed buzz strokes on a snare drum. Develop a feel for how the cymbals react to one another. Only supply the energy for contact and then get out of the way. Whether you crash top or bottom edge first, the physics of a good cymbal crash are the same. The player initiates the movement of the cymbals and allows the plates to react freely with each other after the initial impact. Any forced glancing, pushing, or pulling motion after the contact will not give the air between the cymbals time to escape. This will result in air pockets or thin-sounding crashes. Think of dropping the cymbals together, not pushing or slamming them together. It is important to remember to get as much metal vibrating as possible by allowing all the edges to come in contact with each other. Set the cymbals in a loud crash position with the top edge at a 30 to 45 degree angle. The cymbal plates must not be concentric or parallel, but offset slightly. The upper cymbal should overlap the bottom by a few inches. The upper edges will be closer in a top first crash, or the lower edges closer in a bottom first crash. We are demonstrating top edge crashes here. Provide the energy for the plates to make contact. When you feel the cymbals begin to sizzle and push each other around, draw them apart as you follow through the motion of the crash. One analogy is to think of opening a new jar of pickles that is stuck. Supply the energy to move the lid and relax as soon as you feel the lid pop free. Practice this at many dynamic levels with varying amounts of energy. Listen to and feel the cymbals move together. Depending on the instruments that you are holding, it may be necessary to allow the cymbal edges to touch for longer or shorter amounts of time to achieve a full-bodied crash. The first exercise will give students a basis for developing the feel for the cymbals. The music will determine the length, volume, and attack of the crash. Follow-through and larger arm motions can be discussed once control over basic cymbal movement and sound is achieved. Now let's combine snare drum, bass drum, and cymbals and discuss how these instruments can work together musically. We often think of this instrument combination in marches, both in bands and orchestras. Often in orchestral music, the snare drum is replaced by a triangle, creating the janissary sound of a Turkish marching band. This sound was first heard by Europeans during the Middle Ages. Many orchestral composers have used bass drum and cymbals together to create excitement during musical climaxes, from Beethoven to the present. Band music during the Revolutionary and Civil Wars was used both for entertainment and to move troops. Following the Civil War, these marching bands played concerts in parks of small towns all across America. In the 1890s, there were approximately 15,000 small-town bands in the United States. As concert music grew in popularity, the need for a drum to play signals was replaced by drums that would blend better with the woodwinds in a band. Newer modified instruments were invented to play with these new ensembles. Just as John Philip Sousa had modified the tuba for marching when he made the sousaphone with a front pointing bell for projection, inventors like Adolphe Sax were developing his sax horns and saxophones to complement the brass and woodwind instruments of these smaller, softer bands. The drum set was also developed at this time, enabling one player to cover the parts of three while the band was not on the march. Although the drummers were playing smaller instruments, and they were influenced by this new ragtime and jazz, they still had rudimental backgrounds. Think of the percussion section as a three-man drum set when playing a march. Remember that many of the marches were written when the drum set was new and ragtime and Dixieland jazz were popular. The percussion section should swing and keep time just like a jazz band drummer would, accenting the ensemble's phrases when called for. Marches written by Sousa, Fillmore, and countless other composers use flams, ruffs, 5, 7, 9, and 17-stroke rolls, but very few rhythmic patterns. The drummers who played in turn-of-the-century bands all knew these rudiments in the tradition of the Revolutionary and Civil War drummers. This combination of old and new styles makes percussion parts in these marches very unique. Listen to these excerpts from Hands Across the Sea by John Philip Sousa. See how the instruments fit together and work as a team, sometimes providing quarter note time, other times bringing out accents in the wind melody. The bass drum and cymbals are the kick drum and hi-hat working together on the beat. The snare drum is the backbeat, usually playing with the horns off of the beat. All three instruments should balance and only bring out their parts when accents or dynamic changes are written. Now let's hear the bass drum part alone. Listen to the music and change the sound of the cymbals to match the musical phrases. Are the winds or strings playing short, crisp notes or smooth legato lines? Should the cymbals blend into the ensemble texture or be heard above the group? The cymbal player needs to approach each crash with these ideas in mind. This will also make the part much more challenging and enjoyable to play. Follow along with the music and see how the cymbal part is interpreted from the written notes. Many bands in the late 1800s and early 1900s only had three percussionists in the section. One played timpani and glockenspiel, one played bass drum and cymbals, and the other played snare drum. In fact, in Sousa's band, the bass drummer, Gus Helmicke, was the highest paid member of the band. Sousa considered him so important to the heartbeat of his group. Playing this style of bass drum with attached cymbal is sometimes referred to as playing park band style. The bass drum needs to be muffled with the right knee. The cymbals are muffled with the bass drum beater hand and the chest. Some subtlety is lost from both of these parts playing this style. However, the ensemble for playing both instruments together is actually improved. Let's listen to Hands Across the Sea now played in this park band style with bass drum and attached cymbal. In a march, the bass drum and cymbals work as a team to bring excitement to the ensemble. As the bass drum listens to the tubas and supports the bass line, the cymbal player must match the bass drum in volume and intensity of sound. When accents are written, the cymbal sound jumps out of the texture and the cymbal player becomes a soloist. It is sometimes desirable at these moments to leave the next quarter note out and let the cymbal sound decay naturally, while the bass drum keeps the pulse moving. Now it's time for you to try some of these concepts and play along with the video on snare drum, bass drum, and cymbals. It is important to remember the historical time period when marches were composed. The drummers who played with Sousa and Fillmore grew up in drum corps where rudiments were taught by rote and very little music was written down. Rudiment combinations were put together for each fife and drum song. When these drummers began to play concert marches on smaller snare drums, they would close the rolls down somewhat, but keep the hand patterns of 5, 7, and 9 strokes together. Flams get a slight accent on the beat in 6/8 and on the offbeat in 2/4 time to keep the snare drum backbeats with the horns. Rolls should have the attack accented, not the release, which keeps the snare drum present on the offbeats. The bass drum and the cymbal take care of the basic quarter note pulses on the beat. The Washington Post March was the most popular dance number in America in the late 1800s. Make sure it is played with a dance feel, even though the snare drum is playing rudiments. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Sometimes flams are used in the snare drum part for a specific effect. In Sousa's Black Horse Troupe, the snare drum is imitating the sound of horses' hooves. Accenting the flams rather than the heavy beat creates this effect. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. The roll is only a means of sustaining sound on the snare drum. Rolls should have a clean attack and release. The body or middle of the roll should not cover up the moving musical lines in the winds or strings. Think of rolls as having a subtle forte piano attack. Back off during the middle and release with a single note. Measure all rolls whether they are double or multiple bounce. This will keep the tempo steady during the roll. Don't check out mentally, but stay engaged in the rhythm of the music on longer rolls. Play precisely with the winds when you have rhythms that double their parts. The snare drum should complement the horns when they are playing afterbeats together. Both are background textures. When longer rolls are played, the snare drum should play underneath the moving lines. However, when the snare drum plays sixteenths or doubles rhythms with the winds or brass, the dynamics should rise up to meet the melody line. The next example is a good study in shifting dynamics and matching rhythms for the snare drum. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Remember that shorter rolls should be measured with the eighth note pulse of the time signature of the music. 2/4 has a duple or even subdivision of 2/8 notes per beat, where 6/8 has a triple subdivision of 3/8 notes per beat. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Some conductors ask the bass drum and cymbals to change the accented notes and the repeat of the last melody of Semper Fidelis. This sets up the band similar to the way a big band drummer would fill before a loud accent. The last time through the melody, the snare drummer can shift the accents from the release to the attack of the roll to give the march a swing feel. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. The U.S. Field Artillery March is a great example of musical percussion writing. Accent the roll attacks, listen to the bass drum and cymbal note lengths, and give each instrument a chance to shine within the first strain of the march. Let's listen again and watch the cymbals from two different angles. Remember, the cymbal player should think about adding color to the ensemble. Use the two techniques demonstrated earlier in the video, making a difference between repeated quarter notes and loud crashes. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Every American musician will play the Stars and Stripes Forever at some point in their career. Follow the winds and the brass to make the section sound as musical and melodic as possible. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. This march by Gustav Holst is more orchestral in feel than the marches we've just played by Sousa. The bass drums should ring more, almost wide open, and the cymbals can play more large, loud crashes. Listen to the openness of the bass drum sound and how the bass drum and cymbals work together, just as in the Sousa examples, to accentuate the melodic patterns. Sometimes they're in the background, sometimes they're playing loud explosions. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Let's listen to the Holst march again, adding the snare drum parts. Notice how the snare drum follows the melody and the rhythm of the melody. The snare drummer is playing very musically, rising and falling with the phrases. In the third system, you will notice all right hands on the quarter note when the part becomes mezzo forte. Get into the background texture here. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Use the entire drum head to create the maximum dynamic effect from forte to piano in the crescendos. Play from the edge to the center of the drum, going back to the edge for piano. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Make sure to attack the roll with a good strong accent. I'm using a double right hand sticking because my right hand is the strongest hand for me to attack the roll. Don't forget about the dynamic change from mezzo forte to forte on the repeat. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Four-stroke roughs are difficult to play on snare drum. Make sure that the grace notes don't interfere with the rhythm they're attached to. The bass drum should be played with open, ringing sounds. Notice the LV, or let vibrate sign, in measure 3. In this example, the cymbal crashes are loud. Make sure to overlap the edges and play a flam-style crash to get as much metal vibrating as possible. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Here we have four-stroke roughs again. Make sure they don't cloud the rhythm, and forte piano rolls with crescendos. Strike the first note of the roll with a tap, not a buzz stroke, to get the largest difference between the forte and piano notes. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. When playing suspended cymbal, it's not necessary to roll fast. Place the sticks or mallets on the edge of the cymbal and only hit the instrument as fast as you need to keep the sound vibrating. Maraca rolls are very difficult to play. Soft rolls are sometimes easier to play by swirling the maraca and releasing the roll with a tap in the opposite hand. Likewise, soft rhythms are sometimes easier to play with one hand than playing hand to hand. The difference in the sound of two maracas is taken away this way. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Staccato cymbal notes should be played like short bass drum notes. Get the full sound of the cymbal, just make it short. Don't squash the cymbals together like a hi-hat. The forte piano snare drum roll should be played with the maximum difference between the loud and soft note. Remember, use a single note to start the roll and then crescendo from edge to center. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. The difficulty of playing this snare drum part is the eighth note rests. Notice the sticking is all one hand. You can pulse the missing note with the left hand on your leg silently, or listen to the bass drum. Only use 2 sticks at the very end of the excerpt where you can't play fast enough with one hand. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. If the entire drum group uses a unified sticking, the ensemble will be much easier to keep together. Follow the sticking here and notice that the bass drummer and the snare drummer both use the same sticking. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Use the same sticking pattern for each repeated measure to keep the rhythm consistent. This is a difficult part. You need to spend some time practicing this on your own, like you practice your rudiments. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. When playing the tambourine, poke at the head using some arm weight to get the jingles to jump together. Holding the instrument at a 45-degree angle is a much crisper sound than flat or upright. The notes should be short and crisp. Rolls can be played with the thumb or the middle finger. Fast rhythms can be played on the rim or on the head with the tambourine upside down. Loud and fast can be played with the fist and knee. Shake rolls should be played with an attack and a release. The tambourine part is marked with shake rolls here. Listen to this passage first with a shake roll, then with a finger roll. I think the finger roll sounds smoother and more intense. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Hold the triangle at eye level so that you can see the conductor, the music, and the instrument with your peripheral vision. Make a C with your hand, place the clip in the C, keeping everything in front of you. Striking the triangle at a 45-degree angle gets the most overtones out of the instrument. Listen to the different sounds on this instrument depending on the angle of the beater. 45 degrees is the way to go. Rolls can be played in either corner. The bottom corner makes it the easiest to play rhythms and rolls quickly. Keep the beater at a 45-degree angle even when you're playing rolls. This excerpt demonstrates rolls on both triangle and tambourine. Notice the 45-degree angle of the beater remains consistent all the way through the triangle crescendo. The tambourine part is played with finger rolls, good accents on the attack and release of the note. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. The repeated rhythmic figure here moves from pianissimo to fortissimo. Use the entire plane surface of the drum head for the maximum dynamic change. Keep the sticking pattern consistent in the 7/8 bars, so you're playing the same sticking every repeat of this rhythm. Remember the good forte piano crescendo, 2/4-26. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. Maintaining a consistent 45-degree angle with the tambourine keeps the sound crisp and clear. Play opposite your holding hand for most control of the instrument. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. This soft tambourine part is most easy to play by turning the tambourine upside down and playing with your fingers either on the head or on the rim. Listen to the difference in the fingers on the head in the first passage and the fingers on the rim in the same rhythm repeated. Also notice the difference in the steadiness of the rhythm with the sticking used in the first passage versus the second. It's not necessary to play with a lot of motion, just enough to get the jingles to hop up and down crisply. Also notice the triangle part is not a roll, they're 16th notes. Let's watch this passage again from a different angle. This delicate triangle part can also be played with 2 beaters by clipping the triangle horizontally on the stand. Whenever a triangle is clipped to the stand, put some padding in between the clip and the stand so the sound of the instrument does not vibrate the stand. It is a good idea to add a second safety loop on your triangle clip in case the first one breaks. Listen to how much more precise the rhythm is with 2 beaters instead of 1. Now let's do this example again, while you play and I conduct. You're on your own now. You get to play this one all by yourself with no example. Have fun! I hope you've enjoyed learning the concepts and working on the techniques presented in this video. All of these ideas can be transferred to any music you play, whether in band or orchestra. Always remember to listen to the others around you and make your parts blend and fit in a large ensemble. Keep practicing!